fighting for this title. And he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the warm down. Second time for Chief Football Correspondent Oli Kay. Get a match ball next time, mate. How are you doing?
Very good. You? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm all right. We are here to talk about the media agenda today. Very kind of Oli to put himself almost in the firing line here with this one. So I'm going to ask you, is there a media agenda? Why is there a media agenda? And is there anything we can do as United fans apart from just ride it out and accept it?
When you say media agenda, what do you mean?
All right, so I see an over-representation of United in the media. Now, there may be a case that I look for that. There may be a case that United stuff catches my eye more than everything else. There might be the case. I have the feeling that's not the case. I have the feeling that when we see articles like we saw yesterday, people writing about Alexis Sanchez going shopping and dropping Doritos, and they find a way to write about it. We saw something else in the Mail as well, where someone had imagined this is what Jose Mourinho's reaction would have been to something, as imagined by a reporter, and you're like, how is this relevant? And I don't see this for anyone else. And I don't see the articles about how... I see the articles about how Jose Mourinho's ruined Anthony Martial's career, didn't go to the World Cup, now he's outcast from the team. I'm not seeing them about Leroy Sané.
Do you think Guardiola's ruined Leroy Sané's
But I'm
career?
not seeing those articles.
Do you think?
No, I don't.
Do you think Guardiola's impact on Sané has been the same as Mourinho's impact on Martial? I would say Guardiola's impact on Sané, although he's not in the team at the moment, has been extremely positive, and I would say that Mourinho and Martial,
I think
there's
still a difference in the way those two managers get reported, I think. And also manage, and yes, success plays into it, I think, absolutely. You can be forgiven a multitude of sins when you're winning things. I see a lot of Jose Mourinho gets stick for not being able to, for not using the squad that he's got. No one's mentioned it again. John Stones, a £50 million buy, now benched. Now, there's differences, and I don't just want to pick on City because I see it in other places as well. I see Jurgen Klopp being praised for signing Van Dijk, transformed their season, took them to the Champions League final. I'm not going to say he was unlucky. I was very happy with the result, but he replaced signings that he'd made. And I'm seeing Jose Mourinho criticised for trying to replace signings he's made. I'm just not seeing a fair rub here, and it's not just that. You can probably drill down into individual ones.
No, you can. Well, in terms of over-representation, right? I don't think any fan complains that their team is over-represented when they're doing well. When they're, I mean, obviously United finished second last season, 81 points, good season by most standards. Not a good season by United standards. Not a good season by the expectations a lot of people had at the time. And they've got City across the road playing amazing football, but they are playing amazing football.
I'm not going to deny
100
reality.
points, breaking all these records, smashing these records. If United were playing that brilliant football, were getting those, all of those, producing that type of football, racking up that kind of number of points, racking up that number of goals, winning trophies in the way that City are doing, do you not think the over-representation would be equal? Do you not think it would be incredibly positive? I think it would be more positive with United because, to get back to the point really, there is more coverage of United. There is more coverage of United than there is of City, than United than there is of Chelsea, than United than there is of Liverpool. Why? United are the biggest club, and in terms of, we can now quantify that by looking at sort of social media impact of stories, but I don't think at times we particularly obsess about that. I know there are newspapers and media outlets that think, we need Man United content. We need to hit certain numbers. We need a Man United story every day, even when there isn't one. Well, at times we don't have that approach, but United's situation, I'd say the United situation of the last 5 years has been incredibly interesting. I've had a lot of opinions of it and I will have put my.
You mentioned yourself that your latest column was, or one of your recent columns was, prior to the Burnley game. Now, I agree that was a talking point, because I think if we hadn't have won there, there might have been a real chance that Jose Mourinho wasn't the manager now. But prior to the Spurs game, Jose Mourinho comes in, does a press conference, does it 3 minutes or something along those lines. That becomes front page news. Hugo Lloris, World Cup winning captain, is a footnote when he's been caught drunk driving.
It wasn't a footnote. It was on back pages. I've had Arsenal fans say, why is there no media coverage of this? I said, look, it's on this back page, it's on that back page. I
think Jose Mourinho does this long in a press conference.
I know the Saturday morning of that, Mourinho having a rant in a press conference, whether it's a sort of rant about how great he is, which it frequently is, whether it's a rant about a referee, whether it's saying something about a player, whether it's saying something about a rival manager, is back page news. In the same way that when Ferguson said it would be back page news, it would be back page news if Guardiola had the same kind of thing, or Klopp.
Move away from the personalities.
But they're generally more. They generally are not so desperate to own the next day's back page.
If you move away from the personalities then and try and strip it back even further, something that every club has, every club puts it at the same place and the same price. United's kit, when it was launched, was front and back page news for the price.
Right.
It's the same price as everybody else.
Is it? Right. Well, I had no involvement in that. I mean, that would have been during the World Cup, and to be honest, I'm surprised that anything non-England wise at that time would have got anywhere near the back page. But I mean, what are you talking about there? Is it when you say front and back page news?
Look at how much this is costing.
I don't think it was on any front page, was it?
All right, that's an overreaction.
I doubt it was any back page.
It was everywhere.
If you're saying that a United price, United ticket prices or kit prices would get more, would become a bit of a cause in terms of look, this great football rip-off than Southampton or Burnley or West Ham or whatever, then I think you're absolutely right. I think the one kit that people really go on about in that situation is England. The England kit is the one that everyone always leaps on the sort of soapbox and says, "Oh, this is a disgrace. It's a rip-off. They'll only have it for 2 years."
It's only a year now.
And in this case, United. I mean, the kits are a rip-off, and if it takes one particular,
the prices are also set by the manufacturer, not the clubs.
Oh, absolutely. That's
why the prices are universal. The Premier League, United's kit was the same as Tottenham. It was the same as City. It was the same as Arsenal. But it was the United. Look how much the United kit is.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Sun that had compiled the most expensive version they can, because you can now buy the players' shorts, the players' socks, and the player playing shirts, which they're like £90 each. Mm-hmm. The whole kit comes to like £200 if you buy the player edition of everything. So that's the headline. It's £218 for a kit, and you're like, well, it's not really, is it?
But and
it's a United kit. Doesn't mention the others.
Well, I'm fairly sure most papers didn't do that. So if one or two papers sort of tried to make a story of United's kit being the same price as everybody else's kit, but very expensive, then that's
what we notice as United fans. When you go, hang on, this is equal, why is it us that gets hammered?
No, but every set of fans is convinced that the media is against them, which is ludicrous, and to me is reassuring, because it means that we're, if everybody is convinced that they're being treated unfairly, in the same way that if you've got a load of children who think, oh, they get special treatment, you need to be as even-handed as you can. Obviously, as I've said, it's not, United don't get the same amount of coverage as Burnley. If Ashley Barnes breaks his leg, and Ashley Barnes is a good Premier League player, it will make less news than if Eric Bailly twists his ankle and is out for 3 weeks. Now, is that right? Well, in terms of interest, global interest or readership interest, it probably, people at newspapers, people at various media outlets are encouraged to weigh up these things and project them in the right way. I'm sure if let's say Sergio Romero broke his leg in training, you would be less likely to devote a whole show to that and to the repercussions of that than you would if it was Lukaku or Pogba, because you think, well, the big name, it's a bigger story, and you know, United are the big name. It doesn't mean that big name coverage of a big club is all negative. And I think a lot of fans of other clubs would have said, well, when Mourinho came and when Guardiola came, I think a lot of people were, I think there was a sense, if I would say anything, going into that first season when Mourinho, Guardiola, I didn't feel this, but a lot of, I think if you go back, I think probably more people tipped United to win the league. I thought it was that season in City.
I thought we could have until the derby.
And I think there was a narrative going into that derby that all right, well, you know, Mourinho's got United. You know, he's a great start. They'd won the first three, hadn't they? And City had won the first three, but it was a sense that, oh well, this is Guardiola's first test. He's going to come up against, you know, Mourinho, who knows these tests, these occasions inside out. I think, if anything, if there was a sort of predetermined narrative to this, and I didn't, because I always thought Guardiola would be more successful at City than Mourinho would at United. But I think the general media perception at the time and the general media narrative at the time was more raising questions about Guardiola.
Really?
And yeah, certainly at that time, going to that first start. Because a lot of people say, oh, you know, why has he benched Joe Hart? Why is he got rid of Joe Hart? Why is he insisting on this tippy tappy football? What's Claudio Bravo all about? Why is he not giving Yaya Toure a game? Because everything he was doing was unconventional, and it was because I think there's this mentality of, oh well, you've done it in at La Liga, you've done it in Germany, but you're in the Premier League now, you're going to get a shock. I think there was a lot of that around Guardiola. And there was none of that around Mourinho. I think the changes Mourinho made in his first summer were universally or almost universally applauded. Everyone said, "Oh yeah, he's built a strong, tough team," and Pogba, and it's a lot of people felt, and a lot of people like to be proved right. So a lot of journalists were saying, and pundits were talking about that being. I think there was a feeling that United were more likely to give City a lesson than City were to give United a lesson, and I think it's if that narrative has changed over time, it is because City are, Guardiola and City are the ones who have given United and Mourinho more of a lesson. And I think if you had United playing the same football under Guardiola as City are under Guardiola, and if you had City playing the same football under Mourinho that United are playing under Mourinho, if those two managers were in opposite jobs, and if the results changed accordingly, I think the coverage United would, the positive coverage around United would be great. The coverage of United would be much more positive than it and vast than it is around City, because United are a bigger club, because there would be more coverage. People would be saying, let's do. I don't want to come up with random examples, but if you think of how positive the coverage is of City, it's because what they're doing is really good. And it would be multiplied with United because it would be really good, and it would be United. So if people are looking for clicks and feeling that they have to cater for this enormous interest in United, whether it's from United fans or rival fans, positive stories always sell.
But don't negative stories cater to both United fans and everybody else? Well,
they probably do. But if United were playing in that way and were getting the same results that City are getting, and if everything was really positive, and to be honest, everything around the club has been negative. The fans' mood, their star players' mood, the manager's mood, not least.
There is a lot of negativity, but I think it's the under-representation of facts, and it's the over-representation of drama. That's what annoys fans.
I think that's symptomatic of the way football is covered in this country. Drama sells, big names sell. It's not just papers, it's not just TV. I mean, it's you've got Eric Cantona on your thing. Big names sell, and people want big name coverage. Unfortunately, today you've got me, which is which is why your YouTube figure is going to plummet. No, so underrepresentation. I think when there is drama at a club, there's huge media coverage. I bet there was more media coverage of Liverpool in the period where they were in absolute meltdown between, say, 2008 and 2011.
Really?
When it was Benitez at war with the owners and the owners at war with each other. The
Benitez facts press conference was possibly the only time I can really think of that. There was pages and pages of Liverpool in meltdown, Liverpool in financial crisis, Liverpool owners at war with the manager, Liverpool manager at war with chief executive. It was that whole period got far more coverage than anything they've done since. In terms of being back page news, that is the period, I would say, when Liverpool were back page news every day. And that's because those kind of negative crisis drama stories sell. So United, when they were stable for, what would you say? They were certainly stable for 20 years, from winning the title. Yeah, there was obviously the boat got rocked with the Glazer takeover.
It did, and that was all. That was all news. But anything Ferguson said over that period, which generally served his and United's agenda, was back page news. United were back page news for 20 years, and nearly all of it was positive. Now I know there was a sense from Ferguson at the time that any defeat United had was magnified, and if you lost 2 in a row it was crisis. Well, yeah, that's the same way that Man City lost 2 games in April, big games, lost to Liverpool and lost to United, and their season.
Mathematically, the title's still on. Then
they went from being on course for the treble, and I would say they were the best team in Europe last season. Not Real Madrid, certainly not Liverpool.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I thought they were the best team in Europe last season. They were on course for the treble. And then it just fell apart in 15 minutes of one game and in 15 minutes of the next, and the way they disintegrated was poured over endlessly, and it was people saying, well, okay, we've raved about Guardiola all season. Has he got it wrong in these games? No, I think he did get certain things wrong in those games, but over that period, that shows that mentality of, okay, you've been great, you've had all these plaudits, but now you've lost 2 games, 2 big games, and we're going to, there's more negative analysis now, and more critical analysis.
This is a lot down to how certain clubs interact with the media. I believe City are quite open with a lot of things, but I've heard from journalists that it's happened to. If you write negative stories, they ask you to explain them.
City are,
and obviously we mentioned earlier Liverpool being quite open, bringing in
City and United are sort of very different clubs in many ways. I would say City have had a much more sort of proactive approach to the media in recent years. In particular, they've succeeded in getting a real message out there through.
Well, as I said yesterday, when them reports come out about the stadium being 20% empty for a lot of their attendance last season, I was like, stand by for the City propaganda, because I think they're brilliant at it.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a tangent, but I think those police figures look like nonsense to me.
I don't think they're capable of counting executive boxes.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue.
I remember there was one the other season where they were saying, United actually have 8,000 empty seats on average every home game. You think
My eyes tell me different.
No, they don't.
I think City is a little under what they publish.
There's sometimes cup games normally. There's sometimes those very high up tickets in the North Stand, which are the last, always the last to go. But United don't have this problem with empty seats. Everyone can see with their eyes that there are cup games in particular.
It's a big chunk of people.
Midweek cup games, City really struggle with. I think there's no secret in that. But I think that gets media coverage, doesn't it? It's frequently a talking point on.
It is on social media amongst fans. I don't know if it is amongst journalists.
Well, I think it's kind of. I think it's slight. I mean, is there a great mystery about it? Is there a great scandal about it that Man City, a club which has a smaller fan base than United, can't fill a 55,000 seater stadium?
No, I don't want to make it
for every game.
An anti-City.
I think they fill it for most league games, and your eyes tell you that it is full for most league games. I don't think they've got the way. Well, they just haven't got the way Liverpool, United, Chelsea, Arsenal. They haven't got a massive waiting list for every game. They have to work hard to sell their cup games, and the Champions League games and League Cup games and so on will be interesting, because I'm sure that despite the increased interest that there is, they won't sell. But it's a massive tangent. This. Where were we?
The way different clubs react or act with fans.
Well,
United are very insular, and it seems like Liverpool are opening doors.
Insular is the word. And if you go back to, I would say United's approach to media relations is still very much shaped by the Ferguson mentality, which was once he'd won the European Cup, Ferguson was like, well, I don't need these guys anymore. There was he kind of created this empire which, having previously had quite close relationships with journalists, and then he kind of cut everybody off and I don't need that. We're
I think he still had his favourites, didn't he? Was it Howard Nurse? I think one of them.
He did have his favourites, but I mean, or his least despised ones, I would say. It was so the Ferguson approach to the media was very much, it's United against the world. It's United against, the media are the enemy, despite the fact that they're raving about us nearly every week, nearly every game that they're raving about us. There is mass pullouts every time we win the league, and blah, blah, blah. No team got more positive press over that period than United. But Ferguson was convinced, or wanted everybody to believe, that the media were against them. So United's approach to media relations is I don't think has ever really moved on from that. Whereas you've got other clubs. I mean, generally, the smaller clubs are the ones that in the Premier League are the ones that can't do enough. I mean, I rang up Watford last week to say, look, is there any way of getting an interview with Troy Deeney? And it's like, I'll just get him. It'll be fine. And so I saw.
When I went to Bilbao, I was like, is there anyone I can speak to? A big fan of the way your whole club is set up. And he was like, would you like to speak to the sporting director? I was like, shit, all right.
No, exactly. That's the way it should be. Obviously, United are inundated with requests, but I think they probably comply with less requests than any other. United in terms of interview, interview access. Generally, if they're putting their players in a situation where they have to do media stuff after training, it will much more often be stuff to suit their own commercial things. You see other clubs going out their way to promote their charity stuff, their community stuff, and United do that sometimes. But you can be more certain that if there's an interview with a United player in a paper or whatever, it'll be a sort of commercially linked thing. Which
I know even MUTV have to bid for interviews at the start of a week, and they go into the same pot as the 900 different sponsors when they're bidding for time, and then someone at the club will be like, right, you get that, you get that, you get that, you get that. That's it, done.
United are they've appointed, or they're about to appoint a new director of communications, Charlie Brooks, who's a guy from Nike. He's very good. The fact that he's been at Nike means he will have a sort of very modern upbeat take on, proactive take on how a club should, how a brand should protect itself. And I hate the B word, but it is about projecting the brand when it's United. I think doors will open, but if you look at, you mentioned Liverpool. Liverpool not only are more accessible for journalists, and not only are they more amenable to interview requests to journalists, and we've got an interview with one of Liverpool's main players going in at the weekend, but they're more accessible to their fan media.
Well, yeah, so Redmen sat down with Klopp for an interview,
and I think and Phil Rapp have I think they did a thing with Trent Alexander-Arnold last season where he went to a food bank, and it was like an hour-long chat about talk about his charity work, and they talk about his football development as part of that, and about being a young player representing his hometown club. And you think, well, that is even more of an open goal than giving a newspaper a player to interview. It's going to reach a huge audience, and all of that audience will hang on his every word, and will be so impressed by what the club are doing, what he's doing in terms of this community stuff. And United should do the same. There is no reason why United shouldn't have the same sort of media access as Liverpool do, as Spurs are very good in that respect. Arsenal, I'd say, used to be very good, but got a bit paranoid towards the end of the Wenger era,
Arsenal actually used to use Arsenal Fan TV to front their own YouTube channel, which is blurring the lines big time, I think.
Yeah. But United don't have the same kind of approach to the media as
it's not even allowing requests that like you just go to the club cold and go, can I interview Mourinho? Obviously that's going to be no, shut up. But there's players we know personally that we could go, he's happy to come and do it, we're happy to do it, are you? And they'll be like, no. And there was a time on one of the American tours where Chevrolet had lined up, I'm not going to say who, but I'm sure you can figure out who, as someone to drive a Chevrolet and ask questions of the players sitting in the car. Now that video eventually got released. I think Wayne Rooney ended up driving the car, but that was meant to have been somebody else driving the car. They turned up for the shoot, and United went,
you can't do it, right? No.
So they're not only are they denying requests that they're not even getting, they're blacklisting and denying stuff that sponsors are organising. It's very frustrating.
So having gone for that Ferguson control. With Ferguson, it was all about control, and it was a bit of a dictatorship in that respect. And I know people say, "Oh, well, you never used to write anything negative about United because you're all fearful of getting banned." Well, no, we did write negative things about United when there were negative things to be written. I talked about the sort of crisis that would come over their last 2 games, and the crisis that would come out every time they didn't win the Champions League. And but he was in control. I think the fact that he ended up issuing more bans in his last few seasons than ever before would suggest that the banning culture didn't stop anyone doing anything. People rightly did their job the way they wanted to do it, and weren't living in fear of a Ferguson ban, because, to be honest, by the end, the access was so limited that nobody really had anything to lose by being banned.
Yeah, like, what is there to lose by being banned? So you're not in a press conference. So for most journalists, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get to ask the question that he's not going to answer anyway. Like, because I see it a lot of times. So what Paul Pogba's just said this, and he's not going to answer that. Why are you even asking it?
Well, he sometimes does, doesn't he?
When you ask him about a transfer, and he goes, "Well, I'm not going to talk about transfer." He said it 95 times.
But he sometimes does, and he wouldn't. We're talking Mourinho now. He wouldn't name names, but he would give his view daily, almost to the point of nausea, about what he thought of the club's general progress or lack of progress in the transfer market. And so asking him about transfers was worthwhile, And I think he wanted to talk about it all the time. Mourinho doesn't get dragged into things he doesn't want to talk about. But Mourinho has the same desire for control of the media. But I'd say his paranoia or his sense of us against the world is far greater even than Ferguson's. So there's a desperation to control everything. Generally, in terms of what comes out of United, it's Mourinho's message. Or, on occasions, it's Woodward's message, and those messages they were on the same page for a while.
They don't come out in press conferences. That's it. What is there to lose, essentially, by being banned? You can get the quotes on YouTube.
No, but there's then a separate part of the press conference which is
the embargo stuff. But full time they will still get that embargo stuff, yeah. Right. And it's not allowed to be used by the same rules as you guys can't use it, but we still get the video of it.
So the impact of being banned is very small. I'm not sure Mourinho has issued bans.
I think he has. I wish he would.
But
just for him to just peacock.
It doesn't do any good. If you're top of the league and you're banning journalists, that's doing that from a position of control. If you're doing it because you don't like the fact that people are being a bit negative about you and your back's against the wall, I think you're putting yourself in a position where you're then there to be shot at. Would a journalist who say I got banned by United, would I then be more likely to twist the knife? Well, human instinct probably. I don't really have much to lose in terms of what I say or what I write in terms of access at United.
I think some journalists actually love to be banned as well, so it'd be like a badge of honour for some, I imagine.
I don't think it would be, but I think people just write. You talk about columns, and I write a weekly column, and you just write how you feel, and that it doesn't have. People don't have to agree with it, or don't have to. It'll be my opinion on something. So if I've said that I never felt that Mourinho was particularly the right person for United, but that they shouldn't sack him because it would be daft to do that. The problems that he's made lots of mistakes, but he's not alone in that. That's my opinion, and I should be free to be able to write that without fear of being banned or without fear of being accused of having an agenda by writing it. And my view on Mourinho is probably about the same as Eric Cantona's view, which he expressed this week. And it's a lot of it's not just some journalists who said that Mourinho wasn't right for United, but I'd say more of the voices who have said Mourinho or questions Mourinho and United are people who are very much associated with the spirit of United, the soul of United.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of fans say it. There's people standing around me in the Stretford End will say it. Ex-players are saying a lot of it.
A lot of the ex-players who say it, or a lot of the fans who say it, are those who are totally immersed in the idea of United being a special club, not a special club which has different values. It doesn't just have ambitions to win trophies. It has aspirations to be more than just winning trophies. More than that sort of Barcelona idea of being more than a club. It's this romantic idea of United, and Mourinho used that word romantic, I think, when he first arrived, and to me there's been nothing romantic about Mourinho's United. But would it have been different if Guardiola came and he was given he wasn't given the opportunity to invest some ways? Now you can say. Do you not think Mourinho's had the opportunity?
No, I really don't. No, I think Pogba was someone he was given, not that he bought. Especially when you hear that the deal was 2 years in the making, you go, okay, he didn't sign him. I think he signed Lukaku. I think that was his decision. I think Matic was his decision.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think Lindelof was.
No.
I don't know Bombay. I've not heard it either way. So I think there's been some opportunities. What really brought it into the open, I think, was like there's 100 million there available for Varane who never wanted to come, but there wasn't 65 there for Alderweireld. And I don't like the idea of Ed Woodward running his thumb over transfers. And you go, this happened last season with Perisic. Mourinho wanted Perisic. There's probably been others that haven't come to light. But there was... we was tickling the nuts of Griezmann for the whole summer last year. We'd have found the money for Griezmann. We'd have found the money for Bale. We'd have found the money for Ran. No, not for him. Not for him. No. And I wonder if Guardiola would have had Smalling and Jones at centre half, and he wanted to replace them, and they'd have gone no. Would we have seen much progression from the team that came third in his first season?
Well, it's probably painful for United fans to hear this, but if United had gone to Guardiola and said, right, this is when he was at Bayern, and said, right, we want you to manage.
Is the reason he hasn't managed United because he said, I'm going to want to do X, Y and Z, and the club was like, well,
do you know what? I think the reason why United weren't all over him for 3 years like City were when he was at Bayern is that there was not the vision to think
probably accurate.
We need him. Obviously Moyes failed the first season. Guardiola wasn't available, so that was a non-starter, and they went for Van Gaal. And until the final months of Van Gaal, there's an influential Manchester United executive. I'm not going to say who, but was telling journalists, we've got no worries. We've got Van Gaal. Van Gaal.
I'd heard in January Mourinho was coming,
but this was early December. This was pre-Champions League.
The Norwich game, the Southampton game.
So everything kind of went tits up in December, but to me the writing was on the wall from the start with Van Gaal. It never. There was a period towards the end of that first season where they beat City and so on, but where things briefly looked up. But the idea of we don't need to look beyond Van Gaal. Van Gaal's a genius, which was a genuine line.
Healthy genius.
I think Van Gaal was a genius, but I don't think he arrived at United with his genius. I think his time for at the top end of the game had gone by then, and I think it wasn't a good appointment. It didn't go well, but United basically were complacent about that because there was nobody at the club capable of looking beyond
in his reign,
beyond
Falcao, Di Maria.
Yeah.
Were they Van Gaal signings?
No, I don't think they were.
Were they Woodward signings?
Yeah. I think he was happy to go along with them. But I wrote at the time. It was United's transfer policy for the last 5 years has been
mental.
It's been ridiculous. It's been ridiculous. There was one really sort of sane-looking summer where everything looked quite sort of strategic. Okay, we'll sign
this kind of Marshall, and you're like, Herrera, Blind.
It was quite restrained.
Blind should still be here.
Schneiderlin, which looked like more sort of thought-out signings, and they were generally really poor. But it was. But the lurching from, or the desperation for the superstar names. He did that interview with Andy Mitten. I'm talking about
we could do things other clubs dream of. That one.
He said about what frustrates me is we haven't got enough players on that Ballon d'Or list. Why haven't we got players on that Ballon d'Or list? They have signed players over the last few years who have been that kind of Ballon d'Or kind of profile. Falcao, Di Maria, Pogba. Lukaku was obviously had that huge status. Matic, huge status. Sanchez, huge status. And to me, none of those players. I think Lukaku's been good, but has not yet shown what he's capable of. I don't think the service to him is good enough. But none of those players have really flourished at United. I think some of the,
we've had no one been consistent under Mourinho. Nobody, not even De Gea, to an extent.
Yeah, but it was the same with Van Gaal. Mata was a huge statement signing as well, and
I don't think that was a Moyes signing.
No, and the retention of Rooney almost like 2 weeks later on a huge contract, that was a statement, even though the two statements seem to be contradictory. So they have been obsessed with. Woodward has been obsessed with getting these names in. When you mention him not wanting to find the money for Alderweireld and Perisic, I bet if Alderweireld was this sort of huge social media figure who had this huge commercial
No doubt.
image.
I said on a fan cam.
He would have paid over the odds for it.
Yeah. I said I think it was after the Spurs game on a fan cam. If you want to make the most money, be the best at football.
Yeah.
If you win things, the money comes.
Although, do you know what? I think the past few years have shown that signing superstar names, although it costs a lot of money, makes money as well. And United, I mean, there's that appalling, depressing line that Woodward came out with about how
we don't need to win.
We don't need to win things to be successful financially, which sadly is true.
And that's frustrating from a United fan point of view, because I see what Liverpool are doing, and seemingly the guy at the top is going, how do we become the best?
Yeah.
You've got the guy at City who's literally saying, how do we become the best? Abramovich used to be, how do we become the best? I think he's lost interest, or his money's run out a little bit, maybe. I don't know if it's running out.
I think he's still
his desire. He's probably all right for the rent. I reckon his desire to put money in has changed.
And there's a stadium thing as well.
Yeah, and I think when you're competing against people who are demanding perfection, you can't come in and be like, let's just be good enough. And I think that was why you saw a lot of Arsenal fans lose their mind, because Arsenal's model was get us in the top four, sound. There was no demand for trophies. There was no. But let's be honest with ourselves. This is what football clubs. This is what Manchester United exists to do. Is to do what Real Madrid are doing. Is to just clean up in Europe and domestically. And when we're not doing that, there's a frustration. And I think we are seeing a lot of that frustration borne out. And people are being irrational about what Jose Mourinho is doing, because he's a negative guy. I think. I'd say he's more miserable than negative. I think he's hard to open up, and I think it's disingenuous what he's been doing the last few weeks, where he's trying to bring the fans in, and I think he's trying to sort of put a wedge in between him and the board, which is probably going to lead to him leaving, I would imagine, eventually. Like, if we'd have lost that Burnley game, I couldn't have seen him being here. I still don't know if he'll see the season.
I don't think he would have been sacked if they lost Burnley. I really don't. I don't think it was at that point. But I think things are, I'd say, fractured, which means broken. But they are it is fractured, and it's, I didn't want to use the word broken, but it's fractured, and whether there is enough, I think, investment in, as in investment in what they're trying to do, investment in trying to make Mourinho successful. I just don't think that at United there is enough vision, direction. And I've said this I honestly have said this for 5 years. It's not just saying this because they had a frustrating transfer window. I would say, I felt like a lone voice on this at times, but I've sort of questioned what on earth Ed Woodward is doing.
Sir Alex was
being in charge of
the director of football.
By all intents and the manager. And a ton of other things. And
academy director,
director of communications.
He did a lot of jobs. So when he unplugs, you probably need 4 or 5 people to step in rather than one guy. Especially if you're not going to give that one guy the total control. They didn't give Moyes the total control. There was like, you manage the football team, we'll sweep up with the rest. And it feels like Moyes might have been planned. It might have been poorly planned, but it might have been planned at least.
There was an idea. There was a basic principle behind it that he represented evolution, and that he was the closest thing to Fergie. I think
it was wrong, but
personality-wise, he was. There were certain similarities, but in terms of football philosophy, there were very few, and it just didn't work. And
Van Gaal felt thought out, if not planned. It was like, okay, looking what he's done in his past, looking at the ethos of the club, these things generally align. He's a top manager. Let's see what he can do. Mourinho felt opportunistic.
I thought it was reactive, because I don't think they would have appointed Mourinho. No, because he was on the market.
That's why I felt like opportunistic.
I don't think they would have gone after Mourinho at Chelsea, had he been at Chelsea. I don't think they said, look, Jose, come
I think
come
him
here.
being out of work for 6 months. Him being out of work,
plus the Guardiola appointment, they thought, we can't go down the Giggs line. We can't go for a Pochettino. We need to go for a sort of the one guy that we think will stand up to Guardiola, and I can understand that, but I didn't really think it was the right thing to do. But in terms of Ed Woodward being so influential over football decisions, I think that is plain wrong, right? He should, not least for his own benefit, because so that he can concentrate on what he's good at, which is not football, so that he can not be overstretched and fielding calls from agents about players he doesn't know about. It's sure, he's getting loads of flack, which I'm sure isn't pleasant. No, because people are saying, "Oh, you're." I
imagine he probably gets it to his face at the match if he's seen it as well.
Yeah, but surely it's in his interests. Never mind United's interests. Never mind everybody else's interests. To appoint somebody who is good on that side. Some visionary who can actually look not just at the next transfer window, but at several transfer windows down the line. That's what United haven't had. They've been going from one transfer window to the next and reacting to what's on the market rather than.
It doesn't even feel like we get up to a transfer window with our ideas in place. It almost seems like the window's open and they go, right then.
But when Mourinho signed that new contract last January, there should have been a sense, right, well, if we're giving you this new contract, this is the way. This is our way forward. We're going to go.
Who do you want?
Who do you want? Who do we want?
I doubt it was Fred and Delo.
No,
and Lee Grant.
I would think not. But it's surely if he was concerned about central defence, then he would have been saying, right, okay, well, I'm going to need. I don't just want a kid or 23-year-old. I don't want buying Lindelof.
Varane's a hell of a footballer. But if he was, why didn't we go for Messi as well? If he wasn't on the cards, he wasn't on the cards. But Alderweireld wanted the move.
I totally agree. But having said all of this, I can understand, and of all the things to criticise Ed Woodward for, I can understand him wanting to put a break on this short-termism in terms of the going after 29-year-olds who are going to want 4-year contracts on massive money, in addition to a 60-70 million pound transfer fee. I would love to see United spend the money, because I hate the idea of it just sitting in a bank and the Glazers just sort of rubbing their hands as the brand goes up and up and up as the club stagnates. I think that just doesn't sit easily with me at all. But I can understand somebody, well, if it was a director of football saying it rather than an investment banker, not rhyming slang, it would be totally understandable for us guys to say, look, we're not going to go for Alderweireld.
The opinion of a football expert, don't you?
Yeah. We're not going to go for Perisic. Look at what other clubs are doing. Look at City are playing, signing younger players, improving them. It works on the pitch. It works on the balance sheet. We've already signed Ibrahimovic. Got no return from that in terms of finance, and obviously one really good year, but it was a short-term thing. We signed Matic, we've signed Sanchez, both 29, huge contracts. Do we really want to get, this team isn't getting younger.
But the team's a very young team still.
It's not very young.
When you go through it, David De Gea still mid-20s, Pogba, Lingard mid-20s, Lukaku mid-20s. You've got Bailly and Lindelof younger than mid-20s. It's Rashford still young, Marshall still young. There is a lack of experience in the team, so I can understand going for the 29.
I would say it's a very experienced team. It's not got that. It's not got the figures that Mourinho's always had in his team in the past, where
I think that's
the huge mentalities, the warrior type. But that's what he wanted when he signed Lukaku. That's what he wanted when he signed Matic, and those two were two of United's better players last season. But they weren't sensationally good, but they were certainly among United's better players. I can understand him wanting that in central defence. I can't understand it at all why, after what would it be now, 6 transfer windows? 6 transfer windows?
5
transfer windows, he's got a back four of players that he doesn't really seem to rate.
Or in most games, we're seeing a back four of players that have been there since 2011, or in a lot of games.
Yeah, no, I don't understand that. And I thought he would prioritise the defence from the start. I thought signing Bailly must mean that he. I mean, I can't imagine that Bailly was forced upon him as in that first summer as somebody did.
Bailly in his first season was great. He's had injury problems. He's had going away to the AFCON, and I think Mourinho's issue is how little he's been able to select him. I think that's his issue with him, and I think he wants someone that's a little bit more reliable. And I don't know if that's.
I can totally understand, but I can also understand them feeling that we can't just keep signing 29-year-olds. What was Van Dijk, 26, 27?
I'm not sure.
I think he was 26 when he signed, I think. But that is clearly, that looks a more astute use of 75 million
there was also
than signing
Bonucci. The rumour he wouldn't have left Italy, but he was someone that might have been available. It didn't necessarily need to be a £75 million 29-year-old. It could have been, someone that was on a free, someone that was with a good. I mean, we've got more scouts than Football Manager has. I think we've got all of these reports coming in. I know some of the scouts that are writing reports, and I know that they're bringing reports in all the time. And I don't know if. I can sort of understand from one half that Ed Woodward probably goes, do you know what? Gareth Bale is less of a risk at 150 million for an injury-ish prone winger than someone you've never heard of for 30. Now, obviously the extras that come with Gareth Bale, and if this guy at 30 doesn't work, then that's a lot of money wasted. There'll always be resale for Bale. But at the same time, you are seeing across the road at City, not so much at Liverpool because they are spending mostly a lot of money, although they've got the fullbacks quite cheap. You're seeing people picking up players for nothing, and what Monchi's doing at Roma, the two players that they signed, I think 15 million and 11 million or something like that. United wouldn't get quoted 15 million for anybody.
No, but that's partly, that they've become a victim of their own sort of. I'm sure United
sit down at the table. There's another price list underneath that they have to get.
No, but David Gill wouldn't get quoted absurd fees. Well, I'm sure he was at times, but. Ed Woodward will attract, a premium in himself, because there'll be a perception that he'll pay it because he's gone so far over the odds at times to get deals done. I mean, the Pogba deal at the time was, and I know 2 years on, people could say, well, look, they might make a profit on him. And look what the world transfer record is now. But that seemed so far over the odds. And I know people at other clubs and Chelsea and Man City, and they just thought, well, he's brilliant. He would improve our team, but that price is ridiculous, and the wages are ridiculous, and all the other fees associated with it are ridiculous.
I don't think we'd get anyone for. I mean, RVP was 29 when we signed him for 20 odd million. I don't think them sort of deals are kicking around too much no more. No. Because that would have been a brilliant signing to bring in at the time. And
so who you say?
Van Persie.
Oh, Van Persie. Well,
you think at the time David Gill didn't overrule Fergie on that. Fergie goes, I need more goals. But if you look at the cold hard light of day, at the time when we signed him, we had Welbeck, we had Hernandez, we had Rooney, and we had Berbatov. Yeah. And he still let him sign Van Persie. Yeah. So when you go, Fergie, if you hadn't signed him, would we won the league in 2013? Alderweireld might have been, probably not, but he might have been that thing that Jose goes, we can now play a bit more expansive because we've got a rock at the back rather than Smalling or Jones.
But I could also understand if somebody, if it was if it was a director of football rather than Ed Woodward, saying,
it's easy to stomach, isn't it? Saying,
look, do you really think, Jose, that the reason that the area we need to improve is defence above all, at the exclusion of all else? I mean, I think United still haven't got enough on the right hand side. I don't think their forward line is as penetrative, as incisive as others. I don't think their midfield works as well as others. I think they've bought poorly over the last 5 years, and they don't seem to be improving. The very good players they've got don't seem to be improving at United. So something needs. I don't think a central defender alone would have would have been the thing that made the difference. But I was going to say as well. No, sorry, I won't go there. It's just strange, really, because Ed Woodward is now. I think Ed Woodward has got so much wrong, and I think it's become the Ed Woodward club rather than the Ferguson club. I don't think it's ever become a post-Ferguson. It's not been a club shaped by the managers. It's been a club shaped by Ed Woodward, which in turn means a club shaped by the Glazers, and that's bad news. But Woodward would not be getting any of this grief from a lot of the fans if he had said, "Oh right, you know what? We'll pay £75 million for Harry Maguire," which would have been nuts.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the going rate, but it is
or paid whatever it took to get Yerry Mina on the basis of both players having a good World Cup. Now, I think Yerry Mina is clearly.
Maguire didn't just have a good World Cup, though. He had a good season.
He did, but it wasn't a sensational season. I watched him a number of times. I wasn't thinking, this guy has to be in the England team. This guy has to be playing Champions League football next season. And maybe that's me not. Well, probably is me not seeing enough.
I did a preview when we played Leicester, and I was like, if we've got to beat Leicester, Lukaku's got to line up on Morgan. He's got to stay right away from Harry Maguire because he's going to get nothing out of it. Yeah. I said he's their best player. He's the danger man.
But is he? I mean, I know he played in that three for England at the World Cup, and he's reasonably comfortable on the ball. But I don't think he's of the level of John Stones. I don't think he's of the level of Van Dijk. I don't think he would have been a player who, if United had spent 75 million on him, would have taken him there.
It's not 2001 vintage Rio, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's not a Van Nistelrooy. It's not. It's. And if I just think United generally need more than I think there needs to be an overall improvement across the board. I don't think it's just looking at the transfer market and saying, right, the solution is this player. I think they need to buy better. They need to be let off the leash a bit more by Mourinho, in my opinion. And it just I don't know, some air of positivity needs to be there.
Let them off the leash. We had 10 shots against Tottenham in the first half.
Yeah, that's
letting the team off a leash.
It is.
We concede 2 in a minute, essentially.
Yeah. In
the second half, game's over.
Yeah. But there have been too many occasions where they haven't been let off the leash, where things have been. I mean, the Seville game being the classic example, or Seville games being the classic example of that, where
they was very reminiscent of Piraeus under Moyes,
and they, I mean, obviously finished second last season, 81 points. That's decent, but I don't think there was ever the sense that this is a team that's improving and they're getting real momentum, and they're going to be something special next season if they make 1 or 2 signings. Mourinho himself has given that impression. He said,
he's lowered expectations all over.
He's lowered expectations, and obviously that at the time was because he wanted to put pressure on Woodward to make the 1 or 2 signings he hoped. But if he's suddenly turning around and saying, why are people being negative about a team that finishing second? What about the team that finished third, fourth, fifth? I think a lot of the negativity does come from him, and I think a lot of that, going back to what we were saying at the start, a lot of that back page coverage, a lot of the comment and interpretation of everything he says and reaction to what he says, that is because he's coming out with these things in public, which obviously are great for us in terms of the next day's headlines summertime. But I don't think his general us against the world demeanour, me against the world demeanour, is a very healthy one in terms of what United need. I think if you look at Guardiola, I don't think he ever really sort of plays the victim card, even that difficult first season. I think he does.
I think he leaks his victim card. I think he's very clever with it, because he still complained a lot about the Jorginho transfer, but not where you can record him complaining about it. I think he put it out to his allies in the press, and they complained about it.
There are many. There seriously aren't many of those. There'll be people who will. I mean, there are journalists who are.
Have you ever had that
closer
relationship with the manager?
Yeah.
Different managers will give you stuff like,
Yeah.
I want that out, I want that out.
Yeah. But
Do you know sometimes that you're being fed it as well? Because I get that sometimes.
Sometimes you get things from a manager, and you just need to weigh up. Right. We'll find out whether it's true or not, and whether it's totally self-serving. And sometimes the things that a manager thinks are going to do them a favour by being leaked to the media are not the kind of things that would do them a favour. Are going to make it entirely obvious where the leak has come from, and then you'll get the blame for the fallout. But I've had those relationships. I've not got that relationship with Mourinho or Guardiola or Klopp or Sarri or anything else. So or Emery. It's a new group of managers, and they don't play the media games in the same way. Klopp, I know everyone thinks, or United fans in particular, and Everton fans and Chelsea fans, I'm sure, think, the media has Klopp has the media eating out his hand. It's not really the case. Klopp's done a really good job, and yet will be criticised when, was criticised last season for not sorting out the defence, was criticised over the goalkeeping situation. People ask, is he a manager who's going to take the team this far but not take them to the league title? And I think it's it's the same with Pochettino. The points that a lot of fans say are never made by the media are made by the media, but they're counterbalanced generally by a evaluation of and a reflection of what that manager is doing. And if Pochettino has undoubtedly improved Tottenham, and if Klopp has undoubtedly improved Liverpool, and yet neither have won a trophy, and both need to win a trophy, that is the way it's characterised in the media. If Mourinho has won 2 trophies and has not really improved United in the expected way, given the amount of money he's spent, and given all the expectations that come with being Mourinho, then I think that's what's reflected as well. I don't. Obviously, it's people's opinions will fluctuate between this and that, but there's not people lining up saying that Mourinho's a disastrous manager. I don't think anybody's said that. I think some people have said he's a manager whose best years, really best years, were between 2005 and 2010, and I think that's probably the case because you look at his successes over the past years, and won a league title at Real Madrid, which brilliant to win that title at one season at Real Madrid. To beat Barcelona to any trophy over that time was great, but it wasn't a period that anybody at Real Madrid would look back on and think, that was brilliant.
What's mad is that people talk about his third season syndrome, and you look at the places that he actually lasted 3 years. And Chelsea and Real Madrid, and tell me who else lasts 3 years at Chelsea and Real Madrid?
I totally agree with that.
2 years.
I totally agree with that. And Inter Milan, not many get it to 2 years, and his second year was unbelievable. But I do think there is I think the suggestion of the things that he's a manager who builds stuff very quickly for the first 2 years, and it's all about sort of winning while you can, and then probably moving on and not thinking long term. I think that is a fair criticism, in the same way that I think it's a fair criticism that Pochettino will be very much building for the long term, but perhaps in the same way that there wasn't with Arsenal, with Wenger at Arsenal in the later years, there wasn't really that sort of
that push, that killer instinct,
that bloody mindedness to get them over the line. But if you look at Mourinho, the whole third season thing, I think it's there's a very small amount of evidence, but the evidence does point to that. And I think this season, the way his mood has been since the season started, the negativity around him, the 2 early defeats, that only encourage that perception. But the difference really is that at all of those other clubs, there's the first 2 seasons have been spectacular, and that is the way in which I think, well, it can't be a normal third season thing because it hasn't followed the normal Mourinho cycle.
Yeah, we should have won the league last year.
It's not felt like this kind of whirlwind romance that crash, that goes spectacularly wrong. It's felt like a kind of, I don't know, it's felt like a slow motion thing really, and it's yes, there was Stockholm, yes, there was Wembley winning trophies, but it's not, to me, ever gained the momentum that I expected it to, even with, I think, slightly lower expectations of Mourinho at United than
I'm not sure we're going
to
until we get a director of football in, and even that might take 5 years to really see the fruits of it.
And we said that last time I was on back in February. We talked about that director of football thing, and you said, well, does it need to be someone who Mourinho can work with? And I think to make a long-term appointment like that based on compatibility with Mourinho might not be maybe it needs to be somebody whose main job is to plan for life beyond Mourinho, and they're not given.
That might be the first job they have to do.
They're not given this sort of high profile. Oh, this is our Chicky Begiristain. This is our there aren't many. This is our Monchi. Maybe even just appoint someone behind the scenes to sort of work on a succession plan and then eventually bring it to forward so that it doesn't become a constant source of angst, because that is the last thing United need at the moment.
Unfortunately, if you do appoint Monchi or Bertra or any of the guys that have been linked, you're gonna know, even if you don't publicly announce it, because you'll see them leave wherever they've gone from, and they'll tell you the other club are going to United.
And I think Wenger sort of started to realise the writing was on the wall when they appointed Sanyehi and Mislintat, who had been at Barcelona and Dortmund respectively, and they were urged to work on a succession plan, and obviously we don't know how successful that will be. It's very early days, but I think United need to look. Obviously, it can be misinterpreted, but they need to look beyond. They need to think, what are we going to do next?
Well, the clock's running.
Yeah.
Whether he stays 5 more years or 9 more months, the clock is running, and he will leave at some point. Now, you don't have to write this list in stone, but if you come up with an idea of 5 to 10, and then I'm sure you can sound agents out. Look, should Mourinho go? Definitely. Would there be an interest from Pochettino? Would there be an interest from Zidane? Would there be an interest from Jardim? Whoever it is. And if the interest is yes, I think closer to Mourinho getting the bullet or walking, I think you come in and you ask them to give a presentation of what they would expect at Manchester United. I know that Ryan Giggs gave a presentation to the United board about what he would do and how he would take the club forward before they decided to go with Jose. I'd be very interested to see what the content of those presentations looks like, to see what is included in them. And I think you interview, whether that's public or not. I think you interview and you come up with the director of football and the board go, we're going with this man. I don't know if they have to submit like future plans for signings. I think that they do, and I think they go, okay, I think we could probably roll with that. And then the director of football probably has a couple more conversations with the guy, and they go, that's the man. That's who we're going to have.
And that has been very different to the. I know there was a process with the Mourinho appointment, as you referred to, but it was very different to the way United have worked over recent years, and it's more like the way City have done it. I know that was a one-horse race because
it was all Guardiola. It
was they were desperate for Guardiola, not just at that time, but
very interesting to see where they go after him.
I know. It is an interesting one, and I think it'll be huge boots to fill and difficult footsteps to follow in, and maybe succeeding Mourinho won't be as difficult as people had expected. And I thought if he's there for 3 years, 4 years, I think he'll win a title, and maybe Guardiola would win 2 titles. I wasn't really anticipating that Chelsea would win the title the first season, but I just think the bar hasn't been raised as high as everybody perhaps expected it to be, and I'm not blaming Mourinho purely for that. I think there's enough blame to go around, really.
All right, Oli, thank you very much for joining us.
Great stuff.
Where can everyone find your work?
You can find it in the Times most days. You can find it on the Times.
Got any more books on the horizon?
Any more books in addition to the award-winning Forever Young: The Story of Adrian Doherty, Football's Lost Genius?
I'll bang the link to the description.
Is that what your question?
It's in there actually. If you want to grab it, us.
I just haven't had time. I've got a 1-year-old, which is generally made the last year impossible even to think about that. But there are a couple of things sort of distantly on the horizon that I might. There we go.
I'll bang a link to the description in the description.
That award was won, incidentally, the night United won the Europa League, which was also the night my baby was born. So
wow, good night.
So I had to miss the Europa League final. I had to miss the Booker Awards ceremony to be at my daughter's birth. I think I got it right. I'm told it wasn't a great match. It
was a tactically interesting match. Should we say? All right, thank you, Oli. Go follow him. Is it Oli Kay Times? Not Oliver, is it?
Oliver Kay Times.
Oliver Kay Times.
There's also a Facebook page which nobody follows.
Yeah, go and check him out on Twitter because Facebook's dying.
Is it?
Thank you much for joining us, and we'll give him a match ball next time he's on or something like that. But make sure you go and check out the history video that we uploaded yesterday. I think some of you will find that very interesting. We've got the preview coming out tomorrow, as well as a Premier League preview in the morning, and then United review returns on Saturday after what's hopefully 3 points against Watford. We'll see you then.